Like yesterday I was watching the Microsoft one and Phil Spencer was like, we have 50 games to show you. And I just felt like, is that like some kind of threat? Because like, I mean, good Lord.
Welcome to Feminist Frequency Radio. This is episode 30, and I'm your host, Anita Sarkeesian. Ebony wrote some nonsense intro for me, and so instead I'm going to say, hey, I'm back! I am joined by the wonderful Carolyn Pettit.
Hey, everyone!
And the extra wonderful Ebony Astor.
Yeah, and if you want to know about that intro I wrote, hit me up on Twitter and I'll send it to you.
This is the show that asks you to be critical of the media you love, or alternatively, we're the feminist killjoys coming for your media, depending on your perspective. In today's show, we're going to be talking about a couple of things that are burning up on social media timelines. Ocean's 8, the all-new female latest entry in the incredibly popular series of heist movies, and Sense8, the feature-length series finale to the visionary series from the Wachowskis. As always, we'll finish the show by all sharing a little something in What's Your Freak Out? Exclusively for our fantastic drip backers in this week's bonus, we're going to share some reflections on Anthony Bourdain's life and legacy. What is Drip, you ask? Well, it's a subscription-based membership platform, and your generous support is what helps us keep making this podcast. If you want access to special perks and exclusive backer rewards, join our podcast community at d.rip/femfreak. Now on with the show.
Yeah, so Anita, you woke up at like 3 a.m. I'm assuming you're still kind of jet lagged from your recent travels?
Fuck a jet lag, y'all. It's the worst. We just had to record that intro 4 times because I'm so mushy today. But I come bearing stories. Are you ready?
Yeah.
Ebony always wants some wacky stories about Sweden. So I've got one Sweden story and one Seoul story, okay? So I found out this time that in the north of Sweden, they don't talk. Like, they just, don't talk to each other. And so, in lieu of talking, they do this thing where they make this sound to indicate affirmative. So they go, to be like, yes. So you'll be, sitting around the table, and someone will be like, want a beer? It's hilarious.
Did someone explain, the cultural, roots of that?
Yeah, it's fucking cold. I don't know. I just made that up.
What? Yeah, because that makes no sense. That makes no sense whatsoever. No, hit us up. We have some, Swedish listeners,
We sure do.
So someone explain that shit to me. Y'all know I'm fascinated by you weirdos in Scandinavia.
It's great. I was like, yes, it became this big elaborate discussion. Okay, the other thing. So I was in South Korea, in Seoul, which is an amazing city. And they have this thing that is just utterly delightful. They're super into jingles. So everywhere that you go, there is a jingle associated with the thing. So when the subway car is coming, there is a jingle. And it's not just do, do, do. It's fucking fanfare. It's just this elaborate, huge thing. And what we noticed is that one side of the track is one jingle and the other side is a different jingle. So when you're on the escalator coming down, you know if your train is coming or not. When you flush the toilet, it goes doo-doo-doo in the airport bathrooms. When you're walking across the street, they just have a song for everything. And it is so delightful. So way to go, Soul.
That's amazing.
I know. That's what you got. That is my cultural exchange for you all.
Right, but I need more information. Are there words for these jingles?
I don't know. There are no words in the jingles.
I bet you some creative folks have added words. If we go to YouTube, I bet we find some airport jingle lyrics. I'm gonna look it up.
Maybe. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you should look it up.
I'm saying you should have brought this research to the show, but I'll forgive you this one time.
Okay, next time I'll have well-documented proof of my statements.
You know what's going to be great is the people hitting me up to be mad at me giving you the business because you haven't been on the show for a while and they missed you so much. And they're going to be like, Ebony, shut up so I can hear Anita. Too bad, suckers.
Unfortunately, Ebony is the fan favorite, so I'm the one that's going to get their shit somehow.
Nope. But my Twitter timeline would suggest that's not the case.
Carolyn?
Yeah.
What do you got for us in some entertainment news?
So, within the past week, Kelly Marie Tran, who plays Rose Tico, the fantastic Rose Tico in Star Wars The Last Jedi, shut down, her Instagram and, because of I think, the constant flood of harassment, racism, sexism that she had received since, being in The Last Jedi, a film that is despised by so many people who consider themselves diehard Star Wars fans. And what's interesting to me about this is that at least in my Twitter feed and whatnot, there seems to be more of a conversation emerging about, is fandom itself toxic, or what is with all these toxic fandoms, these groups that feel such a sense of ownership and entitlement to the thing that they respond vehemently and violently when that thing becomes something that is not what they want. So that's a whole conversation in itself that I think is really interesting. But the other big, current pop culture event is, of course, E3 in Los Angeles. Press conferences have been happening the past few days. We're recording this on Monday, so we still have a whole day of press conferences ahead of us, which the very thought just exhausts me. But
what? You don't love watching the E3 press
it gets to be yesterday I was watching the Microsoft one, and Phil Spencer was like, "We have 50 games to show you," and I just felt is that some kind of threat? Because good Lord. But I just wanted to quickly note, one thing that was interesting about the games that were announced yesterday is that two of the bigger announcements were games, new games in franchises that historically have starred male heroes, but in the next iterations are both going to center female characters. So you have Gears of War 5, in which this character of Kate, who was a supporting character in Gears of War 4, is now the central character. And then you have the next Wolfenstein game, Wolfenstein Youngbloods, in which you play as the daughters of BJ and Anya fighting Nazis in a 1980s alternate universe Paris. So, these two kind of very violent, legacy, manly man shooter franchises now centering women. I'm a little wary of, particularly of the Gears of War one, because if y'all remember how the Locust Queen in the original trilogy, the head of the Locust, was this kind of sexy, creepy humanoid woman, by far the most human looking of all the Locusts.
Was it a bug with boobs?
It kind of, yeah, but a sexy bug with boobs. And
right. Well, that goes without saying.
Yeah, and so the thing about Kate's quest is that she has this locust artifact, and it's giving her visions, and it's doing something to her mind. So I'm worried that it's going to be again to go down that sexy, creepy route, and it's going to pull her to becoming the Locust Queen herself.
If you would like to learn more about this trope, go to feministfrequency.com and look up Sinister Seductress.
Sinister Seductress, yes. Yeah, so that's my rundown of a few pop culture news stories.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So this week's main topics are going to be split because not everyone watched everything. So let's start with a discussion of Ocean's 8 with me and Carolyn, who went to see it a couple of days ago. And Ebony can just chatter in when she feels like saying something.
That's probably not wise. But I am listening aggressively.
Okay, so Ocean's 8 is the newest entry in the Oceans series of movies. So Ocean's 11 was a Rat Pack film.
Well, the original Ocean's 11, yes, right.
Which was remade with George Clooney and Brad Pitt, and then they made 11, 12, 13, which, whoa boy, 13 was bad if you'd ever seen it.
I did not see that one.
So Ocean's 8 is, I think, 10 years out. I think we hadn't had an entry in the Oceans franchise in
something
a decade or something. And it stars an all-female heist cast. Con cast. Heisty casty con. Yeah. So...
Yeah. I mean, so let's talk just first about that fact in and of itself, because that's important in the sense that, so often in these kind of ensemble movies, if there is the one female character. She's like defined by her gender, right? Like there's all the men have their kind of distinct character traits, and then you have the woman. And one thing that's
also, if you would like to learn about the Smurfette Principle, you can go to feministfrequency.com and search Smurfette Principle for more on that trope.
Yes. And so what's great about a cast like this, where you have 8, women on this team more or less working together to some degree or another, like none of them are. Each of them is defined as a distinct character, right? As opposed to being like...
Yeah, they all have their jobs.
Yeah, their jobs, their unique skills. Like, they each bring something different to the team. And so seeing women defined that way, like, it shouldn't be a big deal, but it still kind of is.
Especially in this genre. Okay, look, I... fucking loved this movie, like, so aggressively. And I looked over at Carolyn. It was like, when it was over, I was like, this is so good. It was so good. And Carolyn was like, I was like, damn it.
No, I mean, look. I liked it a lot. To me, this film, and I mean this like as a great compliment, it's like the cinematic equivalent of like a bubbly champagne. It's just it's such a pleasure.
I hate bubbly champagne, but I know what you mean.
But it's just that light, pleasurable experience, right? So what I meant by that reaction, you know how you and I went to see Alan Cumming sing once, and after that, like we were both like that was really good, but you were also like, it wasn't like one of those concerts where you walk out and your soul is vibrating because it was so good.
Yeah.
And, like obviously, like this to me is not like Call Me By Your Name, where I walk out and my soul is like cracked open and I'm like, but it's a really pleasurable film.
Yeah, it is I have to see it again in order to be critical of it. Like, I was here for this so much. Like, I think at one point my eyes were tearing up because I was so happy. Like, I'm not even kidding you. I had the best time watching this movie.
So, okay, well, just to throw out something, are you critical of, is this something we should be critical of? The fact that, like, Rihanna's character, who's, like, the skilled hacker on the team, and she's great, but is also, like, the one who, like, smokes pot, and when she starts smoking pot, Sandra Bullock is like, oh my God, she's smoking.
Okay, I got a lot of thoughts about Rihanna's character in this, but hold on. I do want to say one. So when I say I need to see it again to be more critical, I feel like I read a bunch of reviews this morning, and there's a lot of people who are who don't really like it, right, or are kind of lukewarm on it, and they think that it's structurally flawed. So in order for me to assess that, I'd have to see it again because I got so swept up in all of it.
Yeah.
I also think that so I'll come back to the Rihanna
of course.
thing.
Yeah.
So it is a cast with several women of color, which is great, but I still felt like it was so fucking white.
Oh, definitely.
And that was one of the things that really that was the biggest thing for me, that I was like, yeah, there are these like secondary characters and like that are a part of the crew, and there's there's 3 women of color on a crew of 8.
Yeah.
And then that doesn't include what's her fuck? Anne Hathaway's character, who's also an important part of the movie.
Yes.
So that was really disappointing to me, right? Like, if you're going to have these 2 partners, why couldn't one of them be a woman of color? That said, I mean, this is not an excuse.
Yeah.
But Sandra Bullock and Cate Blanchett fucking killed it.
Absolutely.
Like, I don't like Sandra Bullock. I've never liked her. I've never liked her movies. The first time I've ever like enjoyed a performance by her was in Gravity. And I was blown away by her in this, because there's this thing where women, sometimes when you have a female character who is supposed to be like tough and sassy and like smarter than everyone else, it's so overacted. And Sandra Bullock played that character perfectly. Like, it wasn't too much, it wasn't too little. You were just like a delight watching her. And then her and Cate Blanchett as her partner, the queer subtext between them was so good. I was like, you are lovers and I'm here for this. But also, Kate's character bounced off of her so well, and like they're two.
Yeah, I mean,
so good.
Kate, like. After the movie, I thought I just did a little like experiment in my head of like, which of these characters would I most want to be and which would I most want to hang out with. And like Cate Blanchett 100% is like the one that I want to be. Like, I just found her character, like her wardrobe is phenomenal. Like, so stylish. But she also has like just dimensions. Like she's not like some simple character that you can sum up in like a few words, because at the end of the film you see
spoiler alert. Spoiler alert.
Amy framed Nick for her own murder.
So spoilers, they pull off the heist. And at the end you sort of see their visions or like what they kind of do with the money or how they celebrate. And you see Cate Blanchett just like at this like gas station at the side of the road with a motorcycle. She hops on the motorcycle and she's just driving up the coast. And I'm like, what a great, image to me of this, this like tough, but human, like, woman, just this liberation of just, like, riding a motorcycle up the coast. Like, you mentioned the queer subtext, but another thing I loved about this film is that none of the women had, like, the like, romance plot line where, they get together with their male lover at the end, right? Like, there's, like, a romance revenge sort of plot element, but none of them is, like, defined by that like romantic pursuit, which is great.
Yeah. Okay. So with Rihanna, I do not understand the choices they made with her character. I think that everyone did a really wonderful performance, and Anne Hathaway blew me away. She's so fucking good. She just was such a delight playing this really obnoxious, like Hollywood starlet. But Rihanna is like this sort of like early 90s Rasta. Like she has a peace sign necklace and they have her in like big funky dreads and she's smoking a spliff. Like, it's 2018. I'm sure she would be vaping.
Yeah.
Or smoking a joint. Like, it was
a joint, yeah.
It was the most weirdly cliched, out of touch, like, rendering of this character. And it didn't make any sense to me because there are modern day equivalents to that trope that you could use in here. And like, that is one thing that kept pulling me out because I was like, what the fuck are they doing? And then some of it was to contrast that, like, then Rihanna comes out in this ball gown and she looks amazing, which of course is fucking Rihanna. Like, she looked amazing in her shitty clothes too. But that was weird. I did not understand that choice, especially because everything else was very contemporary. In the movie.
Yeah. I mean, I think the movie stylistically has like a 70s sensibility to it in terms of like a lot of the camera techniques and things. But yes, like in terms of the wardrobes, the setting, the technology, everything is very contemporary.
Yeah.
So.
There's the opening scene. There's an opening scene. So okay, one of the things that this film does too is it takes a lot of beats from Ocean's 11, but I think does it in a way that didn't feel tired. So it opens up with Sandra Bullock's character Debbie Ocean get like doing her interview to get released from prison, which is exactly how. You see that with, I don't know if it was in Ocean's 11, but I think it was in Ocean's 12 where Danny does that as well. And there's just a bunch of other things that are like sort of beat for beat. Like, you're doing a con and a con. Well, I'm not going to be involved in this. You can't do a con and a con. And then you do the con and the con and then it's successful and it's so satisfying. But there's a line that when Lou, the partner, Cate Blanchett's character, is like, what about this dude as a possible candidate for crew member? And and Debbie's like, no, we don't want dudes because they stand out. And so women don't stand out. We get ignored. And in this case, that's useful for us. And it's like, it's one of the only references to gender in the film that I thought sort of stuck out as like very intentionally put there, so I digressed. The opening scene, she gets out of jail. She's wearing like this really fancy ass dress that she got arrested. And that's not how going to jail works, but whatever. And she does like, it's a very mini series of heists that she does to get makeup and new clothes and a hotel room when she doesn't have any money. And it's so delightful to watch. And I immediately was like, yes, I'm here for this. Yes, this is going to be great. I love this so much. Yeah. Oh, I loved it so much. There's also a line that I wanted to acknowledge where she's doing the speech for the team of like getting them hyped and going. And she's like, somewhere out there is an 8-year-old girl dreaming of becoming a criminal.
Yeah.
So you're doing this for her.
Yeah. Don't do it for me. Don't do it for you. Do it for her.
Oh, it was just so good.
That was great. That was great. This is just a random plot question. She had a list kind of with her throughout the film. Did you ever understand or figure out what the deal was with that list?
Not completely, because you see a shot of the list once and you're looking at it and it almost looks like they're not real names, right? Like they look like weird terms, and she crosses one of them off and there's one left.
Yeah.
Which alludes to if there's a sequel, that's probably going to be who she goes after.
It was probably in her mind then the different what she called the different steps of putting the heist together, I'm guessing.
It might have been that.
Yeah.
I was like, it's either that or it is it's either that or it's the people that she wants to get revenge on or something like that.
Right.
I'm not totally sure. But there was one left on the list at the end of the movie.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
I do also you probably want to shout out James Corden's.
Oh yeah, so James Corden, who I first saw him on. He's the new host of the Late Late Show on CBS, and I would see him do these the what are they called, carpool karaoke segments and stuff, and I thought some of them were really fun. But he's also shows up in a few films, including this one, and whenever he shows up in a film, I just think that he's so great. He just brings such a comic sensibility to these roles without them feeling completely absurd. I don't know. He just sort of came out of nowhere for me and has become this presence who, when he shows up in a movie, I'm really happy to see him.
There's this hilarious line that this will not make sense if you didn't see the movie, but he's interrogating a suspect and he's in this super posh fancy house and has these stupid art pieces, and he's like, "You have everything. Why would you want to steal? You have two of these."
Yes.
And they're just these weird fucking statues, and it's just the timing, the way he did all of that was really good.
Yeah.
That was a delight. So basically the movie, spoilers, will do the heist, and then there's more after the heist. And so that's when he comes in, and there's more fun things that ensue.
Yeah.
Shout out to Sarah Paulson too, who I loved her
God,
character.
she's so great.
Yeah.
It's
I don't have great.
Yeah, exactly. I just think that this ensemble was wonderful. It's I really have basically nothing. No real criticism to this film. It was just like I said. It was just a real pleasure. It's really just a pleasant, enjoyable film. There was a little Twitter exchange I saw where one critic was or a person on Twitter basically said, there's such a lack of conflict in Ocean's 8, and somebody responded, and I agreed with them of how kind of wonderful the overall lack of conflict was. That this wasn't a film where I'm on the edge of my seat, with suspense. It's more I'm hanging out with these delightful, fantastic characters who are doing something really fun and clever and smart, and it's a pleasure to just observe these smart women who are good at what they do the things that they're good at.
And I actually wondered about that as I was watching it. I was like, is there going to be some big thing that comes in and screws up the heist?
Right.
And there isn't a ton of conflict, but you spend so much of the movie actually setting up the crew, and I think, like you said, what you just said about just watching smart people do smart things reminded me of why I liked The Martian, actually.
Yeah.
It's just watching really smart people do smart things is satisfying and interesting.
Exactly.
So we've also talked on this show about how not all stories need to have the same story arc.
Yes.
And that we can tell stories in different ways.
Exactly.
So,
yeah,
I highly recommend it. Go check it out.
Yep, it's super fun.
It's doing really well. It had a big opening weekend. I think 41.5 million domestically. So yeah, cool.
Yeah.
Let's move on to Sense8. All right, so the Sense8 is a show created by the Wachowskis on Netflix. It got 2 seasons, and then it was canceled. Fans were like, you ain't gonna do that to our favorite show. So Netflix was like, all right, we're gonna give you a finale. So they budgeted and created this 2.5 hour long finale to resolve the story, and that just came out
You could
recently.
sort of consider it the Serenity equivalent of Sense8, right?
Yep. Exactly that. Exactly that. So, Ebony,
Anita?
Did you watch the first 2 seasons?
I watched parts of the first season, but I was intellectually and kind of emotionally so invested in the show, while at the same time never watching it. But I just wanted it to be out there. No, but for real, know how it is in terms of, representation. The reality is you can't watch every show, see every movie, read every book, right? And so even though, I dipped my toes into Sense8 when it premiered, the first season, and I was like, I am so happy this exists. It's not for me. And you will be unsurprised to learn why it isn't for me, which is that it is often, oh my God, I hesitate to say this while Caro is in the room, but it is just so earnest sometimes that my natural cynicism, because acid flows through my veins, I would have to shake off an episode because I'd be like, oh my God, stop loving each other and connecting as human beings. But I was so happy that it was out there, and I'm the one who for our listeners, Anita had seen the finale and knew she wanted to talk about it, and I kind of pushed to do it on this episode because I had heard so many people talking about it after it aired, and I was like, you know what? If I'm going to go, I have no problem with spoilers, right? So if I see this and I really have a great time with it, I'm totally happy to go back and rewatch all of season 1 and then watch season 2,
Yeah, so here, I'm going to say this. I didn't like season 1. I watched it because I felt like it was an important thing for me to watch. I thought it took too long to get to the point. It was kind of whatever, meh. And then when season 2 came out, I was like, I guess I'll give it a chance. Or maybe I just didn't have anything else to watch. I don't know. But I watched it, and season 2 just got to me. And here's the thing that I'll say about Sense8. It's not really a good show. But it is I got so emotionally invested in the second season. I loved those characters. I loved the concept of it. When season 2 ended, I was legit sad. I was like, oh, my friends. I can say that in the same breath as being like, but it's not that great. And I don't know how to remedy those things sometimes because I did feel such an emotional attachment to it. So I was really glad that the finale happened. Now, here's the thing is this is a show that is trying to do everything. It's trying to do intersectionality on a massive scale. And I tend to be like, maybe just pick a couple things to do. I think that they did really well with what they had overall. It can be super heavy-handed. The acting is very all over the place. The writing is very all over the place. You like the story, whatever. But at the core, the 8 characters that are a part of the cluster that are all interconnected, I couldn't get enough of that. And the creative editing that they did, which you didn't see a lot of in the finale because they were together, they were physically together. But in season 2, the creative editing to show how they're not in the same place, but that they're in the same place together mentally is really beautiful. And everyone talks about the big orgy scenes, which are such an important part of this show. But I think that those scenes do show that interconnectedness in the same way that they show when one character is in pain, they're all in pain. So one is just nicer to watch than the other.
Right?
I
mean, I'm not I can't remember who says it, but the person in this finale who says pain connects us, so the kind of red thread of trauma that we all know in our specific ways as humans, allows us to connect, right? And forge these bonds. But the show, in this finale, during Anita's and Nomi's wedding and after in that orgy scene, also wants to emphasize that love and joy connects us, right? It's not just the darkness that allows us to come together, although that can be a very powerful force. So yeah, I absolutely loved that. Having said that, of course, the things that I'm most interested in are the fight scenes and the shoot 'em ups, because they're honestly the Wachowskis. And I think it's specifically Lana who was most responsible for this.
Lana was the only one involved,
right? So I don't think Lily was involved, but they know how to block out and shoot and present a fight scene so effectively. You know, one of the complaints about like modern action cinema is that there's this kind of hyper frenetic, really dark, way of filming and presenting action scenes now, like fights and things, such that you don't know who's doing what's happening, etc. And that's never the case in the show. And it was so clear and so crisp, and yet so dance-like. I absolutely loved it.
Yeah, oh, totally. And the show is very much about like radical empathy in a lot of ways, right? So like watching a character who doesn't know how to shoot a gun be inhabited by the character who does in order to save themselves in a particular situation is really interesting. And vice versa, a character who doesn't know how to act is inhabited by an actor to get out of a situation. You know, like that like, or the medical, like my favorite parts of the show is when they're like the tension, when they're in these conflict moments of tension and they're like communicating with each other to figure out how to solve problems. Like it's not even the action sequences as much as like how do they communicate. And then one of the things that's cool in the finale is that now you have these other people who are joining the clusters, you can't join a cluster, but that they are part of protecting the livelihood, the lives of the cluster. And so you have the girl, the partners and the friends who are now like, we are in this and we're going to help you. And watching the communication break down and have to be explained between, I don't know. This is so geeky bullshit, but I just like how the communication does and doesn't work in this space.
I do. Although one thing is, so maybe you can walk me through this as someone who's seen both seasons. For me, there was the potential to be a little bit anxious about the ways that people kind of inhabit not necessarily the bodies, but the minds of others, and then, kind of infuse them with their spirit, to use like a really terrible way of describing it, right? And I just thought this could get so dicey when it's white folks, right? Assuming the abilities of a person of color or someone from like a marginalized identity, not just on the level of appropriation, but we already know that, whiteness as a default kind of considers itself like a tabula rasa, right? So they can take sort of accoutrement and, bits and pieces here and there from other cultures and, kind of decorate their Christmas tree of identity. And so having seen all of the show, do you feel like that ever happens where like, a white person, assumes the like cultural markers or, behaviors of someone that they are not in a way that maybe like tiptoes up to the problematic line? Or do you think they handle it well?
That's a really interesting point. That is totally true. And I never felt that way watching this. I didn't think about it though. Like that, I don't think it occurred to me because I don't think they do that poorly in this. Like, one of the things that I was delighted by in the show is that you are exposed to so many different cultures around the world and different classes and different like experiences of life. And so it just felt to me much more exploratory and sharing than it did appropriation. The other thing here is about consent, right? That like you're taking over people's bodies to some degree. But here's the thing is it's not. One, there is full consent. They didn't choose to be in this cluster, but you don't, whatever. But it's also not like taking over bodies because they reiterated this a bunch in the finale of like, I know what you know. Like, I have your skills. And so I don't know if that's totally true or not because in season 2, there's a moment where they are trying to pull off this but they're trying to pull off this thing and one of them gets distracted and isn't there to tell the other one how to handle the situation. It was like bartending or something. I can't remember exactly what it was. So that is not really in line with what they were saying in the finale where there was these jokes about like, oh, I didn't know you speak French. I don't, but you do. Right. And so like there's a bit of inconsistency in the lore, but I'm not watching this show for the lore. Right. My favorite thing, there's two things that happen, but one of my favorite things is, Kala, I think her name was Kala, she is Indian and she's married to a man named Rajan, but she's in love with Wolfgang, who's in her cluster. And so it's just this like she's just has this tension. Rajan shows up out of nowhere and blows their cover, which that's another issue about security that I was like, come on, there's no way that he would have been able to find them, but whatever. But like, so you watch this epic exploration of alternative relationship structures, right? Where, this guy is very traditional and I'm married to this woman, but he's never like, oh my God, this is gay. Or like, how dare you love another man? Like, I was so surprised at how little how little conflict actually happened, and watching them sort of explore this and when they get to the orgy scene,
right?
Like
they're into it. Yeah.
And he's like, I didn't,
oh my God.
He says something like, I didn't know it could be this way. And like, that's the thing, is that this show is trying to do everything, but and it doesn't always succeed because of that. But it is showing so many different kinds of people, so many different kinds of relationship structures, so many different kinds of being that I think is really special. Now, the wedding scene and going into the orgy scene, a lot of critics were like, it was so fucking long, right? Like they added like 30 minutes just for that.
Yeah, it was a straight up Peter Jackson, Return of the King type situation.
That was entirely for fans. Like 100%. It was not like we're trying to make something that is going to be accessible for everyone. It was like, when they were going, I was like, okay, this is kind of long. Oh God, they're going to do vow. Oh, they're both going to do long vow. Oh shit. But it was like, it worked for those of us who were so emotionally invested. And in that scene, somebody gives Nomi's mother a fucking pot brownie. And Nomi's mother refuses to accept that she's trans and accept that she's a woman and still calls her by her dead name and is just misgenders her and is really shitty. She gets high and is like, I see you. Your name is so beautiful. And I was like, she's like, it's so good. I know that this isn't really how this would happen, but like, I just like that they wrapped that part up and gave Nomi the satisfaction of being seen by her family and recognized and like,
we all deserve cheesy, happy endings. Right? Straight white people, straight white middle class people have gotten to have their happy endings that are ludicrous, and unlikely. The rest of us deserve to have those too, and to have those moments of escape. And I say this as someone who, like I said, I don't feel real human emotion. It's foreign to me. It runs counter to my robot programming. So the whole time I'm watching it and I'm like, this is really beautiful, but it did not touch me. Meanwhile, during the fight scenes, I'm like, I am into it. I wonder if I could shoot a gun that way. I wonder if I could learn how to do karate. I'm ridiculous as a person. Let me be clear. This is a total self-own. I wish I were a better person because I probably would have enjoyed the show more. But because I'm a terrible person, I focused on things that I was like, I'm glad this show exists, but I probably will never watch it.
Man, so the show is so fucking violent. It's so action. So in the first season, when they pull out the rocket launcher, I was rolling my eyes so hard. I was like, this is fucking dumb. I hate this shit. When they pull it out in the second one, you're like, or in the finale, you're like, okay, this is a reference to the first thing and blah, 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 and it's fine. And you sort of like, I guess, kind of lean into it because, I felt more forgiving watching it this time. But like, it is, it's the Wachowskis. Like, it's gonna be action packed, and I think that there's value. Like, some of it is very artful and graceful, and some of it I'm just like, okay, cool. I like the other stuff better. I'm just gonna wait this out. I'm just gonna wait it out till we can like have another conversation or something.
Yeah. No, I'm super glad that I watched this. And I might wind up going back because there were things that interested me that I want to learn more about. I mean, first of all, like, I love Freema Agyeman, so whatever she's in, I'm into it. Sylvester McCoy, the Seventh Doctor, loved it. So glad I got to see him. Naveen Andrews, again, can't get over it. And there was just...
but see, that's the thing, is his character and Daryl Hannah's character, you're like, what the fuck is happening? I don't need... So to me, I didn't give a shit about anyone that wasn't like the core group. Like, every time they devolved into like the lore, and Naveen would pop in and pop out and all this shit, and I was like, I like you, but this character ain't working for me.
Well, too bad, because he worked for me. Naveen Andrews, into it.
I love that the very last shot was a rainbow dildo.
Well, yeah.
Like, I was just like, bless you. Bless you. This is fucking awesome.
Whenever shit like this happens, I feel my age so much. As like vulgar, as, you know, X-rated as some of the work that I consume is, for some reason, when it's like a straight, and I don't mean straight as opposed to, you know, in terms like sexuality, but when it's like mainstream media or whatever, and there's like a pretty, you know, graphic sex scene or implication of it, I get so prudish out of nowhere, like a 90-year-old. And I had that, you know, immediate response. And then immediately right after was just like, I am so happy for you young people. Like I literally thought, I am so happy for you young people. Oh my God, I'm ridiculous. Also, that orgy scene reminded me of this scene, because I was talking about Hannibal all weekend on Twitter. It reminded me of this scene that's not at all like that, but just like these beautiful shades of bodies at this murder tableau that Hannibal stumbles into. I know, it's fucked up. I told you, I'm not a good person.
I know, we all know. All right. Let's so Sense8, I recommend watching it, or at least giving it a try. If season 1 didn't do it for you, maybe try season 2, and if that doesn't do it for you, then whatever. There's loads of other shit to watch. So there you go.
What's your deal? 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 What's your deal?
We're moving into the next segment.
Yes.
Which there's still debate over this title of the segment.
Not in my heart.
So I listened to the podcast, where you talked about Solo and Terminator. I very much enjoyed it. Y'all are delightful and wonderful.
Thank you.
Very smart. But you know, you're so attached to What's Your Deal?
Well, I am. I don't think, you know, Caro is definitely on your side here.
I really only do it to mess with you. 100%. I'm totally indifferent.
I'm just going to say,
yes,
Carolyn.
Yes.
What's your deal freak out?
Aw, thank you. I think this week freak out is more appropriate. The latest Tig Notaro comedy special on Netflix. So Tig Notaro, you know, a lot of you probably heard of her. She came to my attention when she did like just an incredible comedy set at Largo in Los Angeles, where she comes out and she, you know, as the crowd is applauding as she comes out on stage, she's saying, "Thank you, I have cancer. Hello, I have cancer." And it's just this like shocking. I mean, it's the whole routine is like funny, but so heartbreaking and vulnerable at the same time. And it's just like, you know, it's like one of the all-time great comedy sets, because it was obviously not like something she'd written or workshopped or whatever. It was just like this thing had just happened in her life, and she came out on stage and poured her soul out, but had such brilliant comic instincts about it. And so now, you know, her life has changed so much since then. You know, she's got a partner that she loves. They're married. They've adopted kids. They have a cat. And, you know, and like the title of her, I think the special is like Happy to Be Here, which takes on like multiple meanings of like happy to be alive, right? Happy to be here. And like, so she's still got the kind of like wonderfully flat delivery, but there's like this undercurrent of like joy in life underneath it. And like, so like she just can tell a story about like playing with the cat at home, and it go like everything she says, basically it starts out seeming like really kind of simple, but then she'll keep it going for like 10 or 15 minutes, and somehow it'll go in these directions that you don't see coming. So there's this like anticipation of just like, where is her mind going with this like simple premise? So it's like observational comedy, but it's always surprising. It's always, in my mind, like really funny. I laughed so much, and you know, beyond just laughing, it's this experience of like really having affection for this person as like as a public figure and as like a comedian, because she seems so she just seems so great. So yeah, I highly recommend checking out Tig Notaro's new comedy special on Netflix.
Nice. All right, Ebony, what is your deal?
I am currently reading a book that I'm absolutely loving and I'm learning so much from. I might have mentioned it when I first got it on the podcast, but I'm finally able to dig into it. It's called Serve the People, Making Asian America in the Long Sixties. It's by Karen Ishizuka. And the field of like Asian American studies is one that I've only known as it's been sort of proximal to, Black American studies and, Afro-American studies. And so I'm just learning so much about like, key people in the movement, the kind of, boundaries and the scope of, how the kind of, identity of being Asian American came to be and what its kind of signifiers were and the connotations were as that phrase appeared on the scene. And I also love that the author is tackling a period, as the title suggests, the Long Sixties, that's just so key in American history. It's roughly like 59 to 74, which is why it's called the Long Sixties. But this period that has had, very little sustained, rigorous attention paid to Asian American communities in the U.S., despite, how important they were to like, radical Black struggles, radical queer struggles in this country. I'm having such a wonderful time reading it, but I'm also, kind of disappointed that there are so many people whose names I did not know before reading this book. So anyway, I'm loving digging into it, and I encourage other folks to dig in. If you are someone who is well-versed in this field and you want to recommend other books on this topic to me, I would love to have them. Hit me up.
Cool. All right, my freak out is that I had been working on a side project for several months, and we did the thing, and I want to tell you about what that was. So somehow I got into my head that I wanted to do immersive interactive dinners in like high fine dining style, which is a little bit weird, but I hooked up with my co-creator, Alicia Latiker, who has worked in the games industry forever, is working in mixed reality. And we really wanted to explore the ways that you could take mixed reality and use it in real life settings. So kind of take it out of game spaces and make it a collaborative, immersive, memorable experience that you do with other people in in a cooperative space. And her and I are big foodies. And so it just made a lot of sense to do this around a meal. So we took on this enormous undertaking to do this project. And it was called Remnant. And it took place in Copenhagen, and we had these amazing chefs who so one, it's hard to talk about because like we are hoping to do them again, and there's just spoilers from the beginning, and so people are like, what the fuck is this thing? I was like, I can't tell you because I don't want to ruin the experience for you, but it was really cool. And so what we're doing is we're using like immersive projection, where we built an AR app. We did like puzzle aspects of it. The food was deeply integrated into each of the courses was another journey on the larger narrative that we're telling. And this particular narrative starts out where our lovely host, who was amazingly played by Carolyn, I somehow roped her into being a part of this project, which was great, where you come and you meet your friend that obviously your friend is putting on this dinner, and her uncle just died and left you this boat, and her uncle was this sort of like wacky dude who had all these conspiracy theories and had this treasure map and was like, please, after he died, left the boat to you, and you wanted to go take this adventure with 40 of your closest friends.
Yeah.
So that's the story, and we take you along this journey. And it was, we've been working on it for months, and it's really hard to organize something of this magnitude on another continent. This was the pilot. We didn't know how it was going to go, and I think people had a really great time. And
people definitely had a fantastic time. People absolutely loved it, and it was, for me, it was just great to be there and observe it all happening, the way it all came together, the way that people participated and got engaged in everything that happened.
Yeah, there was a moment where like the dessert was melting, because one of the things things that the tables had to do was taking too long. We had planned for it to be 15 minutes and it took like 45 minutes. But we were trying to like hurry people along, and they were like, no, we don't want hints. Like, they really just wanted to solve the problem. So this is what happens when you get a bunch of game developer nerds in a room. But anyways, if you would like to learn more about what we're doing, you can check us out. We are on Twitter at Mixed Flour. That's FLOUR. And you can check out our website at mixed-flour.com. Again, that's FLOUR. And yeah, so that's that. That concludes our show of the eights.
Yeah,
the show of eights.
The eights, that's right.
You can catch us back here every single Wednesday. Remember that you too can join our podcast community and help us bring you this extraordinary podcast every single week at d.rip/femfreak. If you're enjoying the show, please leave us a review on iTunes because it helps us spread the word, and we want to get more listeners. And you know, when you're hanging out, pulling together a heist crew and sitting around talking about how you're going to rob the banks and shit, maybe be like, hey, there's this great podcast that we should listen to in our downtime. You can check out all of our work and our other podcasts at feministfrequency.com, and be sure to follow us on Twitter at FemFreak to stay up to date on all of our news. You can find me at Anita Sarkeesian. You can find Carolyn at
Carolyn Michelle.
And this week, Ebony, where are you at?
You can find me at Ebony8.
Good. Or if you want to tell her how much you love her, at Ebony Aster. Our producer is Phil Serkis, who also composed our theme music, and we'll see you all next week.
Bye, y'all.
Bye, champs.